Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com, and today, really nothing about watches, though it will impact you eventually, one way or another. I'm here to talk to you about the wonderful topic of sales tax, only because it's been in the news. So if you follow the news, you don't have to follow the news. It was talked about everywhere. In this summer, the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision in a case, what was it, South Dakota versus Wayfair, I think. And the result of that case was that sales tax on internet sales will change forever. And, we didn't hear anything about it. And all of a sudden, things have started changing. So I want to just talk to you today about what that is, what it might mean for you, what it may or may not mean for my store, and just to better educate you about what's going on. So first, let's just discuss sales tax, because I know a lot of viewers are not from the United States, and they don't have sales tax. Over in Europe, you have VAT, value-added tax. In Australia, you have GST, goods and services tax. In the USA, we have no VAT. Kind of have no GST, I guess. When you walk into a store to purchase something, you are charged sales tax. Everything is taxed except for usually the essentials. Certain food items, personal hygiene items, might not be taxed. But almost everything has a sales tax applied to it. So you go into the store, you buy something for $10, and let's just say, round numbers, the tax is 10%, which I don't think anybody's a 10% tax. It usually caps out at like 8 and change. You'll pay 11. The store then, every month, quarter, year, whatever their reporting requirement is, they take that money they've collected in sales tax and they remit it to the state. I am a New York State company. So ever since I've been in business for 15 years or so, I've been filing New York State sales tax. If we ship something into New York State, I'm in New York, right? So if I ship something to Buffalo, which is 400 and change miles away, or Lake Placid, which is all the way up, close to Canada, in New York State, though, you are charged sales tax at your local jurisdiction level. And then every quarter, we remit sales tax to all those different jurisdictions. New York State's got, I should have counted, I didn't. It's got to be 30 or 40 sales tax reporting jurisdictions. It's very complicated. The state has its own base sales tax, and then every county has its own county tax, and then sometimes municipalities add their own municipality tax, like New York City. It's crazy. It's complicated. It's a pain in the butt. So anyway, back in it's like 25 years ago now. So back sometime in the 90s, there was a court case, I think it was North Dakota, versus Quill. And Quill was a company that had a presence in North Dakota. They were a Delaware company. And basically, North Dakota was looking to collect their sales tax. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And, Supreme Court said, they don't do business in your state. You can't collect sales tax. And again, I'm not an attorney at all. I can't speak intelligently about this stuff, but I can figure most of it out. The outcome of that case was that if you live outside of the state that the company does business in, and we ship it there, there is no sales tax. So if I ship something to Wyoming, the person in Wyoming does not pay sales tax. Only people in New York State pay sales tax shopping in my store. And most of you probably know this. Now let's say I got so big that I opened up a distribution center in California. Well, now I have a business presence in California, so then California residents would pay sales tax on purchases. So New York State and California, I would have to charge sales tax on. But for all these years, that's the way it's been. Wherever your business is located, if you have offices in 10 different states, then you charge sales tax in those 10 different states. So for all these years, people have been buying stuff mostly tax-free, outside of their state. Years ago, Amazon essentially opened up, business centers in almost every state in the country. So they've been charging sales tax forever. So they don't really care at this point. So back in June, a court case was between Wayfair versus, I think it was South Dakota. Yeah, South Dakota. Wayfair versus South Dakota. So basically, that law or that ruling was brought into question again. The original ruling was way before e-commerce, pretty much started, I guess, early 90s, right? E-commerce exploded, obviously, in the late 90s and then through the 2010, 20, whatever. So these states are all missing out on a boatload of revenue for sales tax. And I can't say I disagree with them. I actually, I kind of agree with the states. It's like you're getting cheated out of all this money. So this case went back to the Supreme Court. Again, this Wayfair, South Dakota versus Wayfair. And, well, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the state. And what that ruling did was it basically knocked down every barrier for states to charge sales tax for goods being shipped into the state from somebody in another state. It sounds like I'm talking in circles, but I think it makes sense. I'll use a practical example, in a minute, obviously. So what happened was this term economic nexus came into being. I guess it's becoming more and more common now as people talk about it. And the way that this case was handled, they said, hey, if a business ships into South Dakota more than $100,000 in items or 200 separate transactions, that company that's shipping into South Dakota must collect and remit South Dakota sales tax. There's 23, 24 states, I think, with this economic nexus law. So all of these states now have this ruling, and they pretty much all follow about the same, the same litmus test, if you will. $100,000 in sales into the state in a calendar year, or 200 or more separate transactions. Now you may ask yourself, why a threshold? Well, if you're, quilting handkerchiefs on Etsy and you sell 3 a week, collecting and remitting sales tax is a burden. It is one of the, what I consider, monkeys on my back. It's just work that it doesn't really do anything. Not for me. I understand it's the state's revenue, but it doesn't really do anything. It's a burden. So they figured, this 100,000 or 200 separate transactions was pretty much a good number to consider that you're doing a decent enough business into the state that you can afford to file. Everyone can afford to file, obviously, because you're collecting the money, you hold it for the state, and then you remit it to the state. But really what you're saying is, you have to pay you have to figure out how the hell you're going to collect it. You have to figure out how the hell you're going to remit it, because all these states have forms and everything else. You got to fill out, you got to file for a sales tax number, et cetera, et cetera. So what does it mean for you? Well, you will start to see, I'm sure you will start to see, stores that used to not charge sales tax for you will start to charge sales tax. So South Dakota is the one that had the ruling. But like I said, there's another 24 or so states that are just already starting sending letters out to vendors. I've gotten letters from a few states already telling you, here's the litmus test. You may need to file for sales tax. So let's say I broke those thresholds in South Dakota. I don't. South Dakota, I don't know if I ever will, because sorry, South Dakota, but there's just not a lot of people in South Dakota that buy my watches. But let's say I broke the threshold, and so if you were in South Dakota and last year you bought a Seiko for me for $200, great. This year you buy a Seiko for me, it's going to be $200 plus your sales tax. You pay the sales tax to me, and then I would remit it to South Dakota during my filing period. Now again, I use South Dakota as an example because I can confidently pretty much say, unless my business blows up exponentially, I just don't think there's enough people in South Dakota to support, to help me break that threshold. Do not ask me which states I will break the threshold in, because I'm not going to say them on camera. I'm not going to put them in the comments section. All I can say is that in the coming months, there will be states that I will have to collect sales tax from, unfortunately. And again, I side with the states in this. I do firmly believe that states should be getting rightfully their sales tax. Now you might say, well, how could you say that as a business owner? And I get it. I mean, the states are being cheated. Brick and mortar retailers in the state are at a disadvantage to a degree. I mean, brick and mortar retail, as you've heard me say a million times, is a dying breed. But, what bothers me is that international sellers selling into the country really have to abide by the same rules, but they're not going to, because what are you going to do to them? They're in another country. You don't have jurisdiction over there. But there definitely will be states, and I'm being brutally honest with you, and I'm happy to do what I got to do to keep everything copacetic. It does put me at a little bit of a disadvantage, because now some of these states that I do have to charge tax, and maybe there's a competition that doesn't have to charge tax in that state. And let's say it's an expensive watch, a $2,000 watch. I ship it to you, I'm going to ding you for sales tax. The other guy ships it to you, he won't ding you for sales tax because he doesn't have to collect it because he doesn't break the threshold. That bothers me a little bit, but again, I get it. You know, it's a good thing that I'm getting large enough that to the point where I kind of do have to do some of these things, but it's bad that I liked it when I was smaller and I was flew under the radar a little bit, a little stealth, if you would. Anyway, I think that's the whole sales tax talk. This has been Mark from LongIslandWatch.com talking to you about sales tax. Have any questions or comments, put them down below. Love to hear what you think. Again, do not ask me if I will be charging sales tax in your state because I will not tell you because honestly, I did not crunch all the numbers yet. And I have no idea. All I can say is that letters did start pouring in from departments of revenue from a bunch of states already asking if I meet that threshold. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.